Good morning and welcome back to Bible Study 101 at Faith Family United Church of Christ. We're going through each book of the Bible and getting some of the highlights. Today we are going through the shortest book in the Bible, that's Obadiah. It has one chapter and 21 verses. So we're going to go through each and every verse one by one until we get completely bored. No, we're just going to hit the highlights. So this should be a short segment if you guys don't ask questions. So you guys got to ask questions, okay? Just to show you again, this is the books of the New Testament as we Protestant Christians have it in order, and Obadiah follows right after Amos and before Jonah, probably one of the most famous stories, even kind of hijacked with for Pinocchio's story of getting swallowed by the whale. So in the Hebrew canon, or the Hebrew Bible, you can see the latter prophets, and Obadiah falls right in between Amos and Jonah once again. So the time frame for Obadiah, they have Obadiah right around 675 BC. This is after the Assyrian captivity, when the Assyrians came and took the northern kingdom of Israel away, and it is before the 585 fall of Jerusalem and the Babylonian captivity. So if you notice, Obadiah has a question mark after it, and so does Amos. So does Joel. Thank you. So does Joel. I saw Amos, and I said I don't want to read Amos, but anyway, my brain kind of works that way. But there's question marks after that, and that's in relation to the timeline. The reason is, just like Joel, it doesn't say the word of the Lord came to Obadiah at this time when King yada yada was at his 31st year or something like that. Like a lot of the prophets, they'll start out that way. So it gives us a time frame. We've got a marker that says this is the time. Neither Joel nor Obadiah have anything like that. It starts out, as I'll read it, the vision of Obadiah. We have heard the message from the Lord. No time frame given at all. So, but traditionally, it falls about that time in between Amos and Jonah. So Jonah's back here, but times get a little jumbled. Okay. Once again, just to reiterate, the Chaldeans or the Babylonians, the Assyrians. The Assyrians came first and took over the northern part of Israel and took them over to captivity. And then the Chaldeans or the Babylonians came up, conquered the Assyrians, and came down and went all the way to Jerusalem, or the southern kingdom, and take them to Babylon. Okay, so in Obadiah, we talk about Edom. And Edom is way down here. If you see, here's Judah, here's Bethlehem, and here's Jerusalem. So the northern kingdoms, or the northern tribes, were Israel. The southern tribes were Judah. And this is Edom. And if you recall, Edom is named after Esau. Esau was Jacob's twin brother. And Esau left the family and moved south of, here's the Dead Sea. Here's the Dead Sea here. And just south of the Dead Sea, this area is called Edom. And the whole book of Obadiah, all one chapter of it, is about the day of the Lord which is coming. And it's going to put judgment on Edom. And it's interesting, we'll get into it in a minute, but I just wanted to show you where Edom was in relationship to Obadiah. This here, it uses the word Negev, and this here is considered the Negev. there's like wadis that come out here, and so there's like a valley that goes all the way down to the Red Sea, or the Persian Gulf, excuse me. And on the west side of that is considered the Negev, and then there's mountains and wadis, and then you have Edom. So that's the dividing line there. Okay. So Edom's destruction, 2 through 14. What did I say? There's 21 chapters, or 21 verses. So 14 of them is basically talking about the destruction of Edom. And there was one thing that I wanted to point out here. It talks about how Edom treated the Israelites in the Negev, and how they just were terrible to them. And they sided with foreign countries to attack them. Okay? But the animosity goes all the way back to Esau and Jacob. And it's like this should be a lesson to us about forgiveness. And as the Disney, since we're woke, we can mention Disney here. The Disney song by the princess, help me out here. Let It Go. Elsa, excuse me. Elsa, I was at Liza. Elsa, she's just, let it go, let it go. I can't sing, but but it's like that. They can't let it go. They always, and when I have a dispute with your our great grandfathers had a dispute and they settled it, and it's behind us, and now we're going to have a dispute and we're going to go, oh yeah, our grandfathers had a dispute too. So it's like they just can't forgive and let go. And this is kind of a sign to that. And it also, to me, it also says that the Bible was written by people about God. It wasn't written, dictated from God. It wasn't like someone had a microphone and stuck it in front of God's face and said, okay, what did you want us to say? And then they wrote what he said down. A spirit comes upon the prophet, and the prophet prophesies in his words a lot of times. The word of the Lord came to them, that's the spirit. But what they say, it comes from their own personal experiences and that kind of thing. In other words, they remember the story of Jacob and Esau and how they fought. And so he brings that into his prophecy when he's talking about Edom, who has far gone beyond just Esau. So you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's when we talk about the Word of God, we talk about we're really talking about what people are saying about God. Does that make sense? Even the prophets use their own language, their own words, their examples from their own culture to bring forth that message. And so that's the most important thing. When we look and we read the books, we need to say, what is the message for them then, and how does that relate to us now? And that's very, very important. Because if we just go by what's said right here, verbatim, word for word, it comes from the mouth of God, then we have a lot of harsh things that God does to people. When we talk about the destruction, are we talking about God's wrath? Is God wrathful? Or are we talking about a lot of our own projections? Man, we really like this to happen to our enemies. So that idea that we're happy that they're no longer oppressing us and coming down upon us, attacking us, that's the message. God's going to stop that from happening. However that happens. If a general that is disrespected turns and marches on Moscow, then that's the avenue that this whole thing takes. And that's what the prophet is saying, that this is going to happen. You guys are going to be driven down by the Lord, but it's not the Lord, it's just the circumstances that's already been put in motion. Anyway, let me stop teaching you my theology, and let's look back at Obadiah. Obadiah is a lot like Joel in the fact that, not only the fact that we don't know exactly when it was written, but also this idea of the day of the Lord. Now, the day of the Lord, or of course the word Lord there, they use the word is YHWH, the tetragram. And that's Yahweh or Jehovah, however you want to pronounce that. But the day of the Lord, to some people, to some prophets, it's like a rejoicing and a restoration time. To others, it's a day of wrath. And that's what's really neat about Obadiah. Obadiah points out it's both. It's when those that are oppressing the people of God are going to be humbled. So for them, it's a day of wrath. And for the Israelites, the whole nation of the Jews, it's a day of rejoicing and restoration. So, is it a day of wrath or is it a day of restoration? Yes, it's both. So, and Obadiah kind of brings that out. To the nations that are oppressive, it's a day of, you could call it wrath. It's a day that they'll be humbled. For the nations that were oppressed and discriminated against in that, then it's going to be a day of restoration because they're going to be lifted up. So, and we get that out of Obadiah. So, basically, all of Obadiah is about the destruction of Edom. And the day of the Lord. That's, like I just said, that's when there's a day of judgment for the nation of Edom and deliverance for Israel, or they just use the term Zion. And then in the end, the Lord's kingdom is established in the land of Edom. So Edom becomes kind of a vassal state to Israel, is what the prophet says. That's it. That's 21 verses. that's all there is to Obadiah. But yet, like I said, there's a lot of interesting things. And one of the things that I want to give a little hint here. One of the things that you do when you're reading your Bible, if you come across a phrase that's just there, like, and you hear it, people talk about it, but they don't. What is it? Like, such as the day of the Lord. You know, what is that? And that's the kind of questions that you have to ask. You can't say, oh, the day of the Lord, that's when the Lord's going to come back and everything's going to be. No, there's a lot more to that. So you ask those questions. And why does it talk about Esau when it's talking about Edom? You know, why does it go all the way back to Esau? Well, that once again, Esau and Jacob is a very powerful story in the lives of the Jewish people at this time. So what do as a prophet? You point to that story and say, remember how Jacob and Esau were in that story? How Esau was the kind of the aggressor, and Jacob comes back with all of his inheritance that he's gotten from marrying his two wives, and he comes back and he sends his wives and everybody, because he's afraid of Esau. Esau's a powerful man, and he tries to appease him, And see so trying to understand that concept, and they're trying to take that concept and place it into their culture. See, the story from long ago, it's just like this. Hey, it's just like it is today, where Edom, Esau, is kind of oppressive and tries to. So when you read, I encourage you to, if you don't understand something, to ask questions. What does this mean? Why do you think the writer used this imagery or something to that effect? Don't just go with the flow, and it's like, yeah, that's what it means, because a lot of times it won't be what it means to them. It only means that to us because of the language that we use to translate. Yes, go ahead.
Would you explain to me, just give me a perspective? You talk about the Romans came in, or they came down and wiped out Edom.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are we talking about? I mean, the population of the world is in the billions. How many people were in Chaldea? How many were in this area? How many Romans were there? I mean, are we talking 2,000, 3,000, 20,000?
Yeah, the population was a lot less dense.
And what did they have for the defense? How many people were in Edom? Was it only 1,000?
Spears, bows and arrows, chariots, catapults, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They didn't have like explosives or anything like that, but well, some say that the Greeks had Greek fire, which was kind of a early napalm kind of a bomb. But they, basically things you threw or shot from a stringed.
But when they attacked and they came down and wiped them out, is it because they were so overpowering they had more soldiers?
That's usually how you won a battle, was through numbers. And if you didn't have the numbers, you didn't go to battle. So.
And most of these countries were not prepared for war.
No. I mean, most of them, you don't have a standing army. In most of them, you just have a defense force, and then all the people would gather together, and they would get out their, swords that they had or whatever.
And at the time, Israel was not united. It was still sanctioned off by tribes, and it was real tribal. So they didn't have any kind of organized militia, and these countries would come in and just sack them.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of the stories from David, that's so great, because he was an organizer of armies. So then David kind of united them, and then they broke apart again.
But in the Bible, they always talk about they wiped them out, but they never say how vicious they were. Decapitation. Everybody was hanging on a cross. Everybody killed all the children.
Well, that was the thing. That was the thing back then. It wasn't so much the warfare. I want to say that the warfare was we destroy all your great warriors, and then we take everybody else captive. And so it's like warrior age men were wiped out, but the children and the women and the old farmers and those kind of people, now they're the slaves. So you didn't want to wipe out all the people. You didn't want to drop a nuclear bomb and kill everybody and go, yay, we won, because the people were resources. They were the ones that come back.
Be the servants.
Yep.
But there was genocide going on and different kinds of things happening to delineate the Hebrew line.
Yeah. They forced cross marriages and stuff like that. So. Any other questions? All right. Next week we're going to do Jonah. Yay! My favorite. I used to think I was Jonah for a while. So we'll see you next time.